Welcome back to Animator Artist Life and the second part of this lesson on how to do a dynamic, realistic ball bounce inside of Maya. Now I hope you've managed to download the rig. Again, it's completely free. I'll leave the link in the description, plus a link to a video on how to use it. So we're going to follow along from the previous video where we did a simple ball bounce up and down to a more complex animation of a ball bouncing along, nice rotations coming to a nice stop. So let's take a look. So I've started a brand new scene here and I've referenced in the rig. Don't import it, reference it in. So you go up to File and then go to Create Reference here, and then it'll bring up your folder and just navigate to where you've got the rig and just bring it in. This way, as and when I update the rig, make things better, add more balls and stuff, you can just swap the reference out and you won't lose any of your animation. Okay, so this is our perspective view, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to set mine to 24 frames a second. Feel free to put yours on 30 or 25 if you want. And I am going to go to our side view, so I'm going to hit the space bar, or you can go up to panels, perspective, or orthographic and side. So hit the space bar and then you can roll over any of the views. I'm going to go over to front view, and if your rig comes in grayscale, it's not textured, just hit the 6 key to show textures, and then I'm also just going to go to show none and then show polygons and show NURBS curves, because that's all we want. We don't want to see the deformers or anything inside. So with that, I have got everything on one screen. So normally I would have things on different screens to give myself more space, but obviously I need you guys to be able to see everything all on one screen. So again, we are going to be a bit limited for space, but we'll definitely make do, and yeah, we're ready to go with the animation. Okay, just as we did with the simple ball bouncing up and down, we're going to sort of block the animation in and we're going to tweak it. We're going to get a good feel for this thing. I mean, you could actually just, if you wanted, import this image, and you could sort of, place the ball over it in the background, but I really don't recommend doing that. It's not going to make you a good animator just placing something over an image. You need to get a feel for how things move, and then, oh, it doesn't move right, let's move the keyframes along, let's move the up, let's move the down. So just use this as a guide, have it on a different screen or something, just to get an idea of the frame numbers and things like that. But don't just bring it in and trace over it with your board. Just don't recommend that. Okay, I'm going to move that across. So let's start. Let's zoom out here. Just as we did before, we're going to set a keyframe on frame 1. Let's just move our keys down this way just so we can see what we're doing. Zoom out, and we're going to just get a feel for this, and it's going to be a process. We keep editing it. So we want to set a keyframe. Let's just see. Let's get an eye for this. So let's move it up. It's going to start with a bit of gravity. So let's move it up to something like this. Perhaps it can always be tweaked, and we're going to hit, just as we did before, Shift W to set a transform key, or you can select all of these and right click and go key selected. If you want, you can sort of animate this going along and then add the in-betweens, or you can add all the in-betweens. It's really up to you. This is my personal preference, and I do change all the time. So if from the diagram you notice that it was sort of based on 7 frames. So now we're going to go to 7 frames in, and we're going to bring this back down to ground plane and sort of along something like this, getting a good eye for it. And we just want to make sure that translate Y is dead on 0. Okay, so now we've got our falling down, bit of gravity like this, and just keep scrubbing the timeline, either using this one or this one to get a feel for it. And I might move this just back a little bit. I think that's a little bit too far. And then we're going to go to frame sort of 21 really. So I'm just going to eyeball this. I'm saying I'm going to move it, say something like this, and then I'm going to go back. I'm going to hit Shift W to make sure that we've got a key selected, or make sure you've got your auto key selected here, so that will hopefully just automatically key any value changes. So I'm going to go to midway, which is sort of 14, and I'm going to just bring this up to something like this, and you can already see down here our green graph, our Y sort of creating this bounce, and we want to get this diagonal line down, and then we can sort of scrub just to see what we get. We've got up, down, okay, and as you can see, the midway point is it's gone too far already, so we just move this back a bit, and we're just sort of placing this for now again. So let's now go across a few more frames. Now it won't be 14 frames again, because these need to decrease, and so the distance needs to decrease as it goes along, so it loses its energy. So let's go up to something like I don't know, 31. Let's eyeball it. I'm going to move it up a bit more. I'm sort of going to go to halfway across again, and I'm going to bring it up. And I'm just going to check what this looks like again. up, down, and you can see we've got this here, and now we're going to go across again. Let's just say something like, 39, 40, bring it along, just whatever, get a feel for it. If it doesn't auto key, again, hit Shift W, go to the midway point. As you can see, it sort of goes between our 2 points, and we'll put the air transform key in, and again you can see this going here, and it might be a little bit too high. Okay, and then we're going to, so we've got down, up, down, up, down, up, and then down, and I'm just going to do one more, a little bit smaller, say something like 43, and you can see they're decreasing in distance as we go across. It's a smaller bounce, it doesn't travel as far. Again, let's just go back to the midway point, something like this, and move it up. And there we go, we've got all our bounces in. Now at the end it is going to roll across, it's going to do a nice roll and then a roll back, but I just want to get the main establishing keyframes in. So let's open up this here, and we've got our X value in as well. We're going to actually delete these keys in a minute as well. Let's just see what we've got here. So you can see, remember from before as well, you can hit anything you want and hit the F key and it just fills up your frame. So we want to get a sort of nice boing, 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 and a gentle steep curve down this way, which we've got, but we can tweak this now how we want. So here, let's just move this one up a bit. Again, I'm selecting, and then I am holding down the Shift. Make sure you hold down Shift. If you don't hold down Shift, you won't be able to, constrain it to this exact value, and you're going to get sort of markers that are off keys. So I'm going to move this one up a bit, this one up a bit. I'm going to hold down my Shift, Alt, and middle mouse drag to sort of move in, move out, and pan around. The right mouse button to move around. And this is looking alright. So we've got down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then a little one. Okay, so I want to get a feel how this looks like with the bounce, because obviously if we play this back now, I'm just going to hit play. You can either hit the play button here or just hit Alt V. We've got that horrible sort of floatiness going along, and you can see the speed isn't quite right as well. So as we did before, let's now, if you remember, we're just going to break the tangents so we can get a feel for the actual bounce, and immediately it will look more like a bouncing ball. So let's select all these curves on the bottom here. Okay, and now I'm going to go along and I'm going to hit this this little button here, which breaks the tangent. And just as before, we're going to move these up. So now we actually get our just like our curve on our diagram here, where it goes in, boing, a sharp one, boing, like this. Okay, so we're just moving the tangents. Again, these are already broken, so I can just move these up. And the more sort of flat at the top, the more airtime you'll have. Let's move this up. Select this one. Let's just get in there and move this one up, something like this, and this one this side. I'm selecting and using my middle mouse button to just drag these up. I've used my W keys for move as well. Okay, and let's move this one up. So now you can see here we do actually have this ball bounce, and there's not much difference in height here. I'm going to actually move this one up so we get more of a drop. Now let's play it back, and instantly we should have more of a ball. There we go, that's great. Let's play it again. Great. And there's a bit of a distancing problem here, so we've got 1, 2, that one there is too wide, so let's go up to here. And let's now, let's see, the distance it's traveling is too far. But before we do this, the gap in this one is too big. I want to bring back our Y, so you can either hit the X, the X transform. This is the X, it's moving this way across the screen. Now you will notice that when we put in our keys, it put in different keys for us, but we want this moving at a constant transform along the screen. We don't need all these keys in between. So I'm going to hit this here just to show all our keys. We've got our Z, but we're not going backwards in Z at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select our X. I'm going to make sure on our last keyframe here, I'm going to, there, we've actually got the X, the last point here. I'm going to select all these in between. We actually don't need these keys. Let's delete them. And now you'll see it's just one transform across. But at the moment we've got this easing in and easing out. We are going to slow it down afterwards with some easing, but not till after the bounce. So I want you to select these, and we're going to turn this to linear. It's this one here. that means it's now flat, so it's going to travel at a constant speed. Now if we play it back, there you go, much better feel already. Boing, 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 there we go, and it's going to stop. We're going to roll this out. There you go, it feels so much better already, just by making those sort of changes. So again, if I selected this and if I had a flat tangent on it, you can see now it's going normal speed and then it's slowing down, which gives you this, it's just wrong. You wouldn't get slow motion in midair like that. So that's when you need to learn how to use slow, leaning, straight tangents as opposed to the easing. So let's have a look at our tangents together. And now you can see we've got our Y up and down and our X across, and they both end on the same frame. At the moment I'm on a frame 43, and now we can just tweak these values. So you can see here the X here has got a bit too much hang time, so you can bring this in, and this is where you can just play, just change things, try things. So you might say, okay, here I want a higher bounce. You can see it live, update here. Let's get maybe more of a higher bounce. We get this curve down here, and then maybe the last one is a bit higher or is a bit lower. Just have a play. So let's just reduce the frame range so we can see this back, and now let's rewind and play and see what we've got. There you go, and that feels really nice. It feels really, it's got the right energy, and we didn't use any sort of tracing. We didn't use, we did this by eye, and this is what's going to make you a better animator, to get a feel for the timing, for the phrasing, for the spacing. So this ball animation tutorial, it really does help teach on your way, and then you can move on to big character animation. So in the next step, now we're going to start going into a bit more complex stuff. We're going to add in the squash and stretch, but this time we have to actually rotate it as well, to get the angles right along a ball. And then we're also going to move on to sort of, when it gets to here, we're going to sort of animate, as it comes in, we're going to animate this ball sort of coming to a stop and rolling in and out, and we're going to get a nice feel to it. So we'll move on to that now. So you can work in any order you want. You could do the squash and stretch next, or you could do the rolling. There's no rules to it. So I'm going to add the extra frames in, do the roll, and then come back to the squash and stretch, just so that we've got all the basic blocks of the movements in. So at the moment we have our ball bouncing across the screen to here, and this is the last frame, and then we're going to sort of just get it to roll to a stop. You might want to add another sort of little micro bounce in if you want as well. So let's sort of, we're on frame 43 at the moment. Let's go straight up to sort of maybe frame 60, give that a try, and we'll sort of roll it out to here. And this one you do want to be flat tangent on the top, because you want it to ease into a stop. So let's just see what that gives us from here. Let's just play this and just see what we get. So obviously that looks a bit too fast. Okay, so now we need to just adjust this. So let's give ourselves some more frames. I'm just going to give ourselves some more frames here, and I'm going to move this frame up. And you can do that in the graph editor, or you can do it down here. You can sort of select it, use your shift key and then middle mouse drag, or you can just highlight it and drag along as we've been doing before. So let's drag this out to something like 80. Let's see what that gives us. So it's going to come into here, and then it sort of slows down into here. Let's just see what that looks like. Yeah, that's better. And we do, if you zoom into here, you can see there's a bit of let's extend this open. You can see there's a bit of a kink here. What you could do is you could break the tangents here, or just make them, let's just try, if we make them linear, you do sort of get this off tangent. So we want to keep this dead straight. So you can either select this, and then we can break the tangents as we did before. So select this one, and then just bring this up. We want to sort of match this so it's coming in, so there's no sort of kink. It's coming in and coming straight out again, and then easy into our stop. So let's now see what that looks like. If you do get into any trouble with this, what you could do is you could add another keyframe after it. So you can see our translate here now is coming along straight, and then it eases into a stop. So let's just see what that looks like. We're up to frame 80 here. Let's have a little look. Yeah, perfect. There you go. So that's great. That looks, and we will adjust that later on to add more realism. I want a sort of little roll and then a slight roll back as well. But we'll get to that in a minute. What I want to do is first add some rotation. So you do this with this control here. So if I go out to our perspective window, so if I go to panels, perspective here, you can see this from this control here is our rotation one. I'm just going to zoom in on it, and this is what we can rotate in any view. So this is the control we're going to use to add rotation as it bounces. So I'm going to go back to my front view. So let's just, now we've got no keyframes on the rotation control, so we're going to have to go back to frame 1 and sort of add that in. So it's up here. So let's now add a rotation value. So this time it will be Shift E. So this gives us our keyframe here. Now if you want, you could just sort of rotate just in the Z all the time as it goes along, but it's good to add a bit of rotation this way to give it a bit more realism as well. So let's just start with the Z, and then on our frame, let's go to our frame where it lands, which is frame 43. And I'm just going to sort of give it lots of rotations here. And again, this will be, you have to sort of trial and error. So I've just selected the wrong control there. So go over to our last frame, which is 43, where it lands. And you can see our rotations up here. I'm going to spin this in the Z a few times. And again, it's all going to be down to taste of how much rotation you want in your ball as well. So let's just see. At the moment, we've got this easing out as well. Let's just see what that looks like. So if we go back to frame 1, so I'll try and fit it all on the screen here. There you go. So it gets to frame 43. It's back. That's quite a nice. That's quite a nice bounce. Rotation. Sorry. So as you can see, as it's rotating. Yeah, that's quite a nice speed for me. You might want faster spin. So as it gets to here, I'm going to now drag up to frame, it was 80 we had, and I'm going to add another slight rotation in. Now this one will be a little bit different because it comes to a stop. So you want to be able to sort of ease it in and ease it out of the rotation. Okay, so let's just see what that looks like now. So it gets here and it rotates. So it's sliding a little bit, so you want a little bit more. So let's just drag this down a bit more and just see what that looks like. Let's zoom in on this because you want to be able to get this last bit right. And just a tiny bit more. And let's just see what that looks like. So I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to go back to our frame 1, try and fit it all on here, and then we're going to sort of play. Yeah, not bad. So you can see it rotating. There you go. I think it needs a little bit more still. So let's just go to here, and I'm going to sort of change the easing here because it's we want it a bit more straight like this. Really, I think we don't need it easing in and easing out so much. And then on the last keyframe here, I'm going to sort of give it a bit more rotation. It, again, just takes trial and error, and it's better to do this by eye. Yeah, that's better. You see it coming to a stop, it bounces, rolls, and comes to a stop. There you go. That looks nice. That's a good rotation. Now I'm going to add a bit of rotation in the other direction as well, just to give it a bit more interest. Okay, so I'm going to go to sort of here, our end keyframe, and I'm going to just sort of rotate. This is just done to taste arbitrary, so I'm going to rotate this way a little bit, maybe this way a little bit, and when we get to here, let's just see this. You don't want too much rotation on this bit. I'm just going to maybe rotate it back up again so we just see a bit more of our texture. And there we go. So you can see that adds a little bit more realism really. Let's just see, because the ball wouldn't just rotate, you know, completely straight in one axis at all. So that's it. Let's have a little playback now. Let's just bring this down so we can just see more on our screen, and let's have a little playback. Yeah, great. And I'm just going to turn off the grid, and I'm going to hide our NURBS curves. I'm just going to turn off NURBS curves, and we're just going to play this back again. There we go. So now we've got lovely bounce. We don't have any squash and stretch yet, and we've got some nice sort of rotational values and a slight bit random as well on the not just on the forward roll, but sort of a little bit of sideways as well. I think that looks great. So now we'll move on to the squash and stretch. If you would like access to all the digital assets that I use in my lessons, it could be characters, it could be Maya files, Adobe After Effects project files, then head over onto the Patreon page where you can support this channel for a very minimal amount per month, and I'll even be given behind the scenes access and building special assets just for Patreons. So let's get back to the lesson. Okay, let's just remind ourselves how the squash and stretch actually works. So as it picks up speed, it's got the gravity, it's spherical, it keeps its shape, but as it picks up speed and it gets closer to the ground, it actually elongates, it stretches here with the speed, and then it hits the ground, we get a squash and a bounce of energy back up the other way. You'll notice the frame on this side, you can have sort of closer to the ground. You can maybe, and we're going to add an extra frame in here to get it to stick to the ground longer, but the frame on this side will be higher because it's got more energy as it springs up, and then again it keeps its shape at the top and then starts to stretch a little bit more, and then it gets less and less as it goes along. So that's the basic principle of the squash and stretch, and let's add that to our scene now. So these controls at the top and the bottom, these are the ones that are the actual squash and stretch. You can just pull them up and pull them down, push and pull them around, and then we've also got, once you've got some squash or stretch applied, you can hit this little red disc here, and this one will actually turn, this will actually rotate where the direction of the stretch is coming from without actually rotating the geometry in the rig. Okay, so let's now go back out to frame 1. I'm going to go to my front camera and let's start plotting in our squash and stretch. So we're on frame 1, and the ball comes down and it bounces here. Now I don't know if you've seen the video before, that I did a simple bounce up and down, and what we do is we added in an extra keyframe on the Y. So you've got our Y here, and it comes down, lands on the ground here, and we actually duplicate this frame to get it to stick longer, because if we add our stretch here, we're not going to get enough frames. I want to get that impact going, so we're going to go through, add an extra frame on every single impact frame and duplicate it forward. So let's start at the beginning. So we've got our transform. It's coming down to the ground here, and then it hits the ground here. So this is this frame here. This one here in the Y. Now we're not going to add any frames in transform along as well. We're going to keep that constant, and you'll see that works as we go through. So let's add our first squash and stretch keyframe. So let's go back to frame 0, and we're going to hit Shift W, or again you can right click here and go key selected. So we've added a keyframe of 0 with it. We don't want any stretching at the top, and I'm going to go down to, this is our impact point here. We don't want any stretching to start until we get to sort of frame 5 here. So I'm going to go to frame 5 and also set another key just to keep our ball spherical, just like our image over here. We're going to keep it spherical until we get to about here. Okay, so now we've got completely spherical to here, and then it's going to start to elongate. So let's go to our impact frame, which is frame 7, sorry, and we get to frame 7, and we're going to squash the ball down. Okay, and the frame before is frame 6, and we want to stretch up. Now don't just stretch one way, stretch both ways, and I'll explain why in a minute as well. Okay, so we've got our ball, it's coming down, it's stretched, hits the ground, boom, impact. And when we get to the floor, this one now needs to be set to 0, so just set this to 0 right here. There we go. So let's just see what we got here. So we got, the ball comes down, stretches, and then boom, hits. Okay, but as you can see, it's quite a jump from there to there, and this is exactly why we want to put in this extra keyframe. So let's go and do that. Now you can either go through the whole animation, you can sort of add in your squash and stretch and then come back, add in your rotations, or you can attack the whole impact, stretch, bounce, everything in one go at a time on every impact frame. So let's do a whole frame here, just so you can see how it feels, and then we can just repeat what we've done as we go along. Okay, so we want to duplicate this frame, and if you saw from the previous video, it's quite an easy process. So I'm just selecting the transform. I only want this this extra keyframe on our main transform bouncing control that we added before, and I don't want it in the X or the Z, so I'm just going to select the Y, and now we can just see our up and down, our Y frames here. Now, as we did before, what we're going to do is we're going to we need to add in these extra frames first, okay? But to do that, we need to add in the frames to everything. So this is important. So I'm going to select the main control to show everything again, and we need to move everything up one frame at a time for every impact frame. So I'm going to select all the keyframes up to here, and now we need to move them up one. Now I'm going to show you a little trick to do this easier. You can either hit the W key and then hold the Shift key just to slide it up one, okay? Or if you're feeling a little bit fancy, you can highlight the number here and type in plus equals 1 and hit return. Now I use this all the time. Now this works with everything, different keyframes values. So I could do plus equals 10 and it shifts everything up. This is so useful. You can even do minus equals 4, okay? So this is a great tip. I use this all the time. So whatever you're comfortable with, we just need to move it up one frame. So just plus equals 1, hit return, and it's done. Okay, so this is where the trick comes in. We're going to go to frame 8 on this, and we want to duplicate this to frame 7. So you middle mouse, drag back to frame 7. Now we're on frame 7, but we haven't changed anything. This is what the middle mouse drag does. Now you can set a key for this, but we only want to set it in the Y, okay? So we're going to go up to Y, key selected, and you can see what it's done here. Now I'm going to just highlight the translate Y because we don't need the rest at the moment. And as you can see, we've got 2 frames. They're exactly the same, okay? Apart from moving this way. So they're exactly the same in Y because we're keeping the movement going this way, okay? But what you'll notice is we have lost our lovely little drop in, our easing, so you need to put that back in. So select this keyframe, hit break tangents again, and move it up, just to get that nice drop back in, okay? And you'll notice there's a little kink here, but it doesn't matter because there's no in between frames. If you want to, if you're a perfectionist and and that really bugs you, just highlight the frame and just drag this down, but it does not matter. Now you can see that we've got 2 frames exactly the same in Y. Not in any other direction, just in Y up and down. Okay, so now we've duplicated our frame and now we can add our extra squash in. So we had our squash come up to here and boom down to here. Now we can do something a little bit extra. So let's now, on frame 7, let's move our ball up and let's stretch it up and stretch it down a bit. Okay, so now let's see what we've got. We've got up and we got down, and now we seem to have we've lost our squash frame, and that's because we didn't hit a keyframe. So it's good to leave all these mistakes in. So we get to frame 7, which is 8, which is our new impact frame, and now we need to set this squash frame back in. So this will be 0. So it's good to always leave these little mistakes in, and we'll squash it down. And I'm going to set a keyframe on both, and there we go. So it comes down, and we get this dunk. And I want this to actually be touching the ground. So this is where, I want you to sort of play around with it and see what the best value is. Because at the moment, we've got our translate Y and it sort of comes off the ground a bit here. I want this to actually be touching, okay? So we got this come down, and it squashes and bounces back up the other side. We're going to add that stretch in a second. So let's see what we've got here. Let me zoom out. So I'm going to sort of drag my timeline down. It sort of gets to there, frame 5, starts to stretch. Boom, okay? It feels a bit weird at the moment because we don't have the bounce back out the other side. So let's do that now. So we go to frame 8, frame 9, and this is where we add our stretch back in. So we're going to stretch this up and stretch this down. Now, what you'll notice is that this is a really important thing. I mentioned this in the previous video as well. If you just stretch one side like this, and you've got your, it looks the same, but you'll notice it's sort of moved up compared to doing this. Now it's really important you do both sides, because if the main transform is moving up, and the squash is moving down, you'll get a weird sort of kink in your animation where one will counteract the other. It'll go up and it will sort of pause for a frame and then go up. This is why it's really important to add the squash and stretch to both sides, okay? So now let's see what we got. We're building this up, boing. There, we're getting there now, okay? Obviously we haven't got any rotation yet, so it looks a little bit strange. So now let's go up to frame sort of 11, and we want this to be back to normal. So we're gonna set this to 0, okay? And I'm just gonna drag this down so we can see our keyframes more. So we've got frame, boing, let me just zoom out so you can see what we're seeing. There we go, we're getting somewhere now. So you've got that sort of cartoony squash. Obviously the more squash you give it, the more cartoony it will feel. Okay, so there we go, we got our first full bounce in, but it still looks a bit weird because we haven't rotated the squash and stretch. So let's get that in now, and once we've done one, then we can finesse it and see how it feels, and then we just duplicate it along. We sort of replicate this, and again we're doing all of this by eye, we're not tracing, and this is what makes you a better animator, okay? So now we need that little special control, and to grab it, you can either do it in your outliner or just go back to your perspective window. So let's go to perspective, I'm gonna hit the F key, and it's this little disc here. You can select it in your outliner. I've dragged my outliner off the screen purely just to be able to give you more space for this tutorial, but it's here. It's this squash and stretch rotation control. I just wanted the outliner out the way for this tutorial because I need so much screen space. So now I'm going to go back to my side. Okay, and now let's sort of add in the rotation of our squash and stretch. So when it hits impact, when it's on the ground, we want it to be dead vertical. So I'm going to hit Shift E. We're doing a rotational value, not Shift W. And you can see over here, I've set my keyframes and they've gone red. Okay, so now as you can see, it looks a bit weird. It's falling down straight. So let's fix that. So the frame before, let's rotate this way. There we go. And at the top, let's see, frame 5. So that looks good. So we can keep that there because it's undeformed at the top. You can see it's starting to stretch. It might be a bit too much rotation actually. Let's just try something like this. And then on this side, we stretch back out this way. And there we go, we get our, there we go. You see that? We get a really nice feel. So you get that, it's coming down. Let's see, from the top, boing, springs back up and goes spherical again. And again, this is all done with taste. You might want it cartoonier. You might actually want it to hold on the ground an extra frame. That's up to you. Just put in an extra frame on this side and tweak the values. For me, I found this a bit more of a realistic bounce. When it builds up the energy, you get this boom, this sort of ball retention, this bounce. And obviously, if a ball's rubber, if it's harder, it will be different bounce values as well. So this is all, again, training you to be a better animator. We're doing this all by eye, by feel. Okay, so let's just play that. Let's just play this bounce back. I'm just going to give ourselves some less frames so we don't have to see more, and I'm going to play this back. There we go. You see, that's got a really nice feel to it. Let me just turn off. The curves, and let me just turn off the grid so we can really see that now. Let's just press play again. There you go. That's got a really nice feel to it, and you might want to tweak this, spend longer on it. And then finesse it, just get different feels. It's sort of hitting the ground, boring, and then we're going up. Okay, so that's the principle. We've done one full bounce. It might seem a little bit complicated or complex, but once you've done one, you'll find the rest really easy. So let's now just quickly go along and let's just replicate that as we go along. And I promise you, once you've done one bounce, the rest will be a lot quicker, and it will really help you understand feel of the weight and timing and the squash and stretch. So we can do these next ones a little bit faster. Let's turn on the grid again. Turn on the grid so we can see the floor plane. We're going to select all our curves, and we're going to go over to here and start adding in the extra keyframe we need. So we've got this here. We need an extra one here now. So this is our next impact bounce. You can see the Y, and we're going to select all our keyframes up to that point. And we're going to move it up one again, so plus equals 1, hit return. There we go. And you can go through and do this to all of them if you want, or you can tackle one at a bit. So let's just do this one again so we know what we're doing, so we're sort of in the flow. Let's select our main transform control, go to our impact frame, which is this one here. If I hit the F key to zoom into here. Okay, do the same trick again. Let's give ourselves some more frame rate, back out to some more frame range. And so we've moved everything up one, so middle mouse drag back to frame 22, and we're going to key the Y. Again, we get our curve here, and we have to sort of break this again. So we break the tangents with this little button here, and move this up. So we get our nice drop in. Again, it doesn't matter about the kink there. So now we've got our extra frame. So we're just going to repeat exactly what we did before. It comes down, bang, hits there. Let's turn the rotation of our squash and stretch is fine for this side. So let's just hit a keyframe on our squash and stretch on this side. Shift W. I'm going to go back to the middle, and we're going to set another keyframe, and I'm going to set another one before as well. So I've just set 3 keyframes exactly the same, all with no values on, but now the keyframes are set. Here, let's move our the squash and stretch rotation curve, not the rotation of the ball, the rotation of the squash and stretch curve, which is this one here again. Okay, we're going to set this back to 0 as it impacts here. And the frame before, obviously, it's going to be turned this way, and as it leaves, it's going to be turned back this way. Okay, so now let's start adding in a bit of our squash and stretch for this frame. So we come down, we're at the top of our, let's just select our transform so we can see the Y. Well, this is what I want to see, just to give us a good idea of where we are along on our timeline. So it comes down, so about here is where we want the squash and stretch to be spherical. So I'm selecting the top and the bottom ones. I'm hitting Shift W to hit a key, make a keyframe. Okay, they get to here, and let's do our impact frame. So here, let's just squash this down. Again, you can work in any order you want, just feel free. I like to jump around and you know, just to get a feel for things as I'm going down. So here, and then the frame before, so we've got, this is our, and let's see what I've done here. So we've got the bounce. Actually, this one will be the squash, won't it? So let's just undo that a minute. Let's get down to here. Yeah, so this one will be our squash frame, so frame 22. So let's just squash this down. Let's select our rotation. Let's set this to 0. Let's see what we got. It comes down, boink, back up, and then we add some more stretch. Don't forget, do it on both sides and try and make it even so that the transform thing is in the middle. Let's have a look. So we've got coming down, and then here we'll have stretch as it picks up speed. So we'll have here. So it's coming down, stretch, bounce. So now we want our stretch frame here as well. So I'm going to stretch this out both sides. When it's on the floor, it doesn't really matter about being both sides. What matters is the fact that it's touching the floor. Okay, so now let's rotate this back out. So on this frame, I'm selecting our little disc again over in my outliner, or you can go to your perspective window and grab it that way. Let's have a little look. So it's coming down, bang, back out, and then here I want to rotate it around again. I'm going to hit Shift E just in case we haven't got a key on that one. And there we go. Let's just have a little look. So we've got both bounces, comes in, bounce, stretch, bounce. Okay, now we just do the next one. So we just repeat the process and keep going. Okay, so you know, feel free to jump around, work however you want. You might feel more comfortable working more logically, where you just add in the extra keyframes, all of them, then come back, or just chop and change, whatever. There's no rules to this. So let's go to the next one. So we're getting to here. Let's add in our extra keyframe on our transform. So again, we want to select all our curves. I'm going to select all our keys, and we're going to move up one. I'm going to do it this way this time, just drag up one. Okay, and I'm going to select our transform, and then on our Y, I'm going to go to our impact frame, which is 34. I'm going to middle mouse drag, and then hit a key, create a keyframe in the Y. Again, we've got exactly the same now. Again, break the tangents here. So this little button again here. Let's move this one up to bring our
get our formation back in of our nice easing in and snapping and bouncing. So we go down, bounces here, and this is going to be our stretch frame before. So now let's select our little stretch disc. You can see it there in the red. Let's rotate this way, and we want the ball to be touching here. And then when we go to here, the next frame, we're going to have let's just reset this back to 0 for now. This and our squash and stretch rotation is going to be on 0. And now let's squash it down. Okay, so we want to see, sometimes you do this, you set a key and then you'll lose what you've done before because we haven't actually set a keyframe. You should have auto keyframe on, so it should be working, but Maya does have a life of its own sometimes, so it's always good practice to sort of hit Shift W to key as you do these things. Again, I'm going to stretch this one up. This is the after the bounce. And as it goes along, you might want less and less stretch because it's losing energy. So let's just see how this is going. There we go. So, and now let's select our rotation squash and stretch. Angle this out this way. There you go. So it's coming up here. Oh, and by the time it gets to here, you can see that it's elongated and looks weird there because it should, by the time it gets to here, should be spherical again. So we need to go in, put that back to 0. There you go. So you got your it boing spherical again, and here it should be spherical here as well. So don't forget to add those keyframes in. Very important. So you got the bounce, and there you go. So we've already added in. We've done our first squash and stretch bounce, our second one, and now almost our third. You can see how much quicker this gets once you get used to it. So let's go into here, and let's just put these in now. Boing. This is going to go up. So as soon as it gets to here, we're going to be spherical again. There we go. Right, let's add in our extra keyframe here. Don't forget to keep saving as you go along, so Control S or just save as different versions. And now we're on our last impact bounce here, so we're going to select all the keyframes again, select all of these, and whichever way you want to do it. So plus equals 1 here, plus equals 1 gives us our extra keyframe. Select just the main transform control. There's our impact frame, middle mouse drag, and set a keyframe on the Y only. Okay, there we go, we got that again. I'm going to select our translate Y so we can just see that, easier to work with. Again, split the tangents, break the tangents, and put the bounce back in. Again, it doesn't matter about this kink. You can flatten it out if you want, but it's not necessary. Okay, so we come down. We've got our extra keyframe now. So the impact is here, is where our squash and stretch is going to be, and then bouncing back out the other side. So now I'm going to select just the squash and stretch controls, top and bottom. I'm going to create a key either side. So we've got something here, and then here as well. Let's just set one there. So on this one here, it's going to be 0, and we want our squash and stretch rotation to be 0. And then as it comes out this side, it's going to rotate this way. Shift E just to make sure we've got a keyframe on. And as it lands here, it's sort of angled this way. And Shift E, let's set our stretch here. So we're going to stretch out here. Again, I'm just going to move this up. It doesn't really matter for the floor one, like I say, it's just when it's in the air you need an equal amount of squash and stretch on the top and bottom. Okay, so we get this side, it comes out here. Boom, we need our nice little stretch as it comes out, like less as we go along, so the less squash and stretch as it loses energy. Oh, we seem to have lost our squash frame there. Put that down. There we go. Boing. Almost there. So we've got boing, boing, boing. And then we're going to get to here. And let's see, just our last little one, our last little bounce. So let's see, so it gets to here and on here. So this is where you probably won't need any squash and stretch. So it goes up to here, it bounces, In the air we get a back to spherical, and I'm going to turn our squash and stretch rotation back to 0. Let's just see what they've got. So the end frames you might want to play with a bit here. And as it gets to here, I think that's this is a little bit, maybe a bit too much squash, because it is losing energy. So let's just reduce this a bit now. This is where you want to go back and tweak things to make them feel exactly right for you in your animation. Boing, bounce, and then here let's add a little mini squash as it hits here. So here I'm going to the frame before, I'm just going to give it a tiny bit of stretch, and we're going to rotate out this way. It hits. Let's just give a tiny bit of squash. Now you might want to put the extra frame in, or you might not for this. It might not need it. As it gets to here again, I am resetting any squash values and the rotation. Here we go, 0, 0. So as you can see, it bounce, bounce, bounce a tiny bit just to get a little bit of wobble as it lands. You see that it's very minuscule. So as it gets to here, I've just added a tiny little bit of squash, and then it goes back to normal as it rolls to the end. So you can see how quick that was now. So let's just have a little look what we got. And we're going to add another extra detail to give some more realism with a roll back in a second. Let's just see what we've got so far. Let's go out to here. Let's just play that back. There we go, really nice feel. And again, I'm going to just hide the nerves curves. I'm going to hide the grid. Let's play this back again. There we go. So there might be a bit too much squash, especially in here, this end frame here. So along sort of, because it's supposed to, like I say, lose energy there. I think the squash is a bit too much. We need to sort of go back in and tweak this. So let's just, you can either just do it, drag it here, or you can actually, do it in your graph editor as well. A good way of getting used to it. Just going to bring this up a little bit. Let's just zoom out and play this back again. Yep, a little bit better. So you want to go and tweak that, but you can see how easy that was to do now. I'm going to hide the curves again just to watch this back. So we've got a really nice feel, we've got a really nice gravity, a pulse up, sort of it bounces through with the energy and it loses energy as it goes through. Obviously you might want to tweak the values a bit more, depending on what size ball and everything you've got as well. There's so many different options. So there we go, so that's a really realistic bounce, and we're just going to go and tweak this a little bit further. I'm going to add a little realistic rollback, and then we're going to take it, I'd like you to go and take this a lot further, and I'm going to explain, and we can add some side bounce in, and you can really sort of take this further. So it's a nice little detail to add, just pretty easy to do. Just as it comes down, it's going to stop and then just have a little bit of rollback like this. So let's zoom in on our ball here. Let's just see what sort of distance we want to cover. So it comes here, gets to the stop, which is this frame here, 84, and then let's just try something like frame 100. We can always tweak this again. Let's just move it back a little bit. So as you can see now, the X curve in the translate X is going up and then back again. Let's just see what that little looks like. So it comes back. Let's just play it from here. Yeah, that's too fast and a little bit too far. So let's move it back, and then let's also, we're going to need some extra frames here. So let's drag our time slider out, and let's maybe move the frame. So you can either, again, do it in your graph editor, or you can do it in your actual timeline. So you just press shift and highlight the keyframe, move it along. Let's try something like 120. Again, just all trial and error, and a little roll back. See, that's quite nice. Okay, so let's just now add a little bit of roll in. So we grab our rotate control. So we've got frame 84 here. Well, it's actually around 83, our keyframe here. We got one that's just moved away from the other, but that's no problem. Just move it back again. So as it gets to frame 120, it's going to have just a little bit of rollback. Now, we've added rolls in all directions, so I'm just going to use this, because we're in the orthographic view, which is like our front view. We can actually just use this big yellow rotate to get it to rotate just this way. And you can add rotations the other way as well to give it even more realism. So let's just rotate it a little bit back this way, so it comes in and rolls back ever so slightly. Let's just play that back from here. Yeah, that's pretty good. And I think I might tweak the value it moves back as well. So I'm going to just move this up again. Let's just have a look at our curve here. I just want it to be a bit slower, and what you want to look for is no sliding. It wants to look like it's actually rolling across the ground, and that is. It doesn't look like it's sliding too much at all there, so that's great. And obviously you need a flat tangent in this, so it comes in and eases to a stop here. Okay, so let's just take a look at this again. Let's just play this back. There you go, it's quite nice. So what I'm going to do now is just add a little bit of rotation in another direction just to give it a bit more realism. So let's just maybe roll it just a little bit like this. Again, this is just like a little attention to detail, and you just get some nice sort of, there we go. A little bit of sliding at the end, but that's not too bad. So let's just zoom out, because you can tweak that a lot longer than me. You've got a lot more time as well. So let's just zoom out now and see what that looks like from the beginning with the rollback. So we've got the bounce, it comes in, and a little roll back. Lovely. Now let me just turn off the curves, and I'm just going to play this back from the beginning. Rewind the timeline. Let's see what we got. There we go. It's subtle, but it's really nice. So you just get this really nice coming, and then just sort of rebound this way. It's just really nice effect. Now I have a challenge for you, a little bit of homework. I want you to take the ball animation, everything you've learned, and just take it a little bit further. All I've done here is I've added some side bounce. I've changed the camera angle, added some side bounce. I've added in a camera, an aim camera, and just tracked it as I've gone along. So you don't have to add in another camera, but I would like you to just take the ball further. If you look at my perspective view, if we go to perspective here, you can see all I've done is I've bounced it left and right and just given it some more dynamics, and it rolls back, and just have a play with it. So bounce it down the stairs, bounce it off walls, do whatever you want, get creative, use the different balls, use the different rigs, and I really look forward to seeing your work. Thank you.
Now I hope you've learnt a lot and you've managed to create some great ball animations. Now I would love to see your work, so please come over and post it in the private Facebook group. I'll leave a link down below, and I'll try and give my time to critique every single one. Now if you've got value out of this video, again I'd appreciate if you could like, subscribe, and please comment to tell me what you thought of this video and what you would like to see in future videos as we build this little community together. Thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one.